Hey guys, I'm going to show you how to make some normal maps for a hand-painted asset. Specifically, I'm looking at how to project it onto a plane, kind of like a decal that you'd see in Substance Painter. So these are the leaves right here. If I actually have the normals turned on, you can see it adds a lot more depth. And of course, this is just an example, really quick. You can improve this by sculpting or doing things in lots of different ways. But what I'm going to grab is just a new scene in Blender. Open this up and add a plane into here. I want to add an image. This is going to be my hand painted background. Here it is. And what I'm going to do is just scale that down. I'll bring it up a little bit so I can see it in the Z axis and make sure it is aligned to the plane underneath it. So I hand painted this, but I really don't want to come into here and hand paint the normals or do something like actually modeling the leaves fully. So what I'm going to do is just make a new mesh on top, a plane right here, bring it up, and I'll just kind of make a tiny little divot in the middle that's going to bring out the depth or dimension of these leaves. So I'm going to turn on X-ray just a little bit and then bring this in and just slowly kind of work through. And as I'm doing this, I'll make sure that I'm kind of wrapping the entire leaf so that the UVs inside of it have a little bit of buffer and I'm not leaving any of the area out. So you really don't need to worry about perfectly matching the shape. Actually, you don't even want to do that. So like if this vertex were moved in too much, then the normals wouldn't be baked onto this part of the mesh. So I just want to avoid that by adding a ton of buffer. And honestly, I want the effect to be pretty subtle, so we're not going to go too wild with this. So all I'm doing is I'm making kind of a little leaf plane around it. I'll grab the middle edge, GZ, just bring it down a tiny bit to add that depth. And that's it. I'm really just going to add 3 of these, so I'll fast forward real quick. Okay, here is my last one. So what I'm going to do now is just hide the reference. And then I have these 3 kind of little leaf high poly meshes that I'm going to be baking down into the low poly plane. I'm just going to hit Control J to join these together and then shade smooth so that everything comes in nicely. And one thing you might see is that there's not really much normal data here. I want the effect to be a lot more pronounced. So you can just add a couple more edge loops here in the middle and you should see there's that crease. And now we're starting to get more into the high poly area, which is looking a lot better. So the things I'll do is just make sure that this is really clear. It's so easy to mess these steps up in Blender here. So I'll do high poly, low poly, and last thing it needs is for you to actually specify a normal map on the plane that's your low poly mesh. So I'll do a new material here. Let's make sure we're in cycles because that's what we need for the baking. And the max samples can just be 16. It does not need to be high here. And then lastly, in bake, we're just going to be baking the normals. So instead of combined, we'll say normal. And then you can do this selected to active right here so that we can just say selected is the high poly, shift, select the low poly, and then it will bake from high to low. Okay, so selecting the plane again, we just need to add a normal map. So I'll do Control A, search image texture. Perfect. We'll just set the color into normal right here. And this is the big step. You do need to make sure you have this set up in a material on the low poly mesh. So I'll add a new texture. I'll just call it normal texture. And that's going to be the one that shows up right here. Just make sure you click new image when you do that. And so you can set the width and height to anything here. There we go. And last bit, you can actually set this. I'll make this a bit bigger. If you hit in when you're on your image, you can actually set the properties of this to be a non-color image, which is kind of the appropriate way to do it. If you want it more pronounced or darker, then sRGB is fine, which is the default. So I'll just keep it like that for now because I'm not doing anything too advanced, but do just be aware of that. The last bit here to be aware of is the distance. So try to minimize the distance between your high poly and low poly. So if you expand this, you can actually set the extrusion to a reasonable number that's keeping these as close as possible. And there are cages and other things, but we're just trying to project this downward. So again, do be careful. Make sure these are not overlapping like this. And then also make sure they are close enough to each other, or the transfer will not be as high quality. And you might get artifacts sometimes. So here we go. Let's set the normal texture in here. And that is all the steps. I know it's kind of weird. I'm just going to go over it real quick again. Cycles. Make sure cycles is set. These samples in your render can be low. This is not as important. It can be high as well. It's just going to take longer. And then in here, we have bake type normal, selected to active, and then a extrusion of 0.1 or some distance depending on how large your scene is. Then over here, I'm just going to select first the high poly and then the low poly. So I'll do that, clicking the high poly, shift, click the low poly, and then all we have to do now is say bake. And there you go. Here is your normal map, which you can bring image right here and then say save as, and I'll just set it to a higher color depth and bring the compression down to 10% just so that it's super high quality, and then say save as image, and that's it. In Unity, there are a few caveats with using normal maps. So first, just make sure this is set to normal map instead of a default texture with sRGB. It should be fine as long as you just put it here and then hit apply. And then in your texture, just make sure that this is set to tangent space on the sample, and that this is all plugged into normal on the fragment shader. And sometimes actually you can be extra safe and put this normal unpack node on there, which will just fix things up. In my case, I really did need it. So just be aware of that. And here is what the scene looks like again if I turn those on. So there we go. You can see there's a little bit of an artifact here just because of how intense the divot was that I put. So I'll probably go back and fix that up and make it a little bit cleaner. But this is a super nice way to add this depth that you need on these decals. And again, you don't have to hand paint it everything. You can just, or even 3D model it. This is just a plane, so it's super cheap. And I could turn that off right there. You can see it's literally just a plane. So this is a really, really cheap way to have some foliage that is looking crisp, clean, and has some normals. And that's it. Thank you so much, guys.